Welcome to Urban Tango Nice Talks. This is the 10th episode in this series, and as you may have noticed, episodes 1 and 5 were with members of Urban Tango Nights, so we thought that episode 10 should also be with a member of Urban Tango Nights. So today I'm going to be joined by Tara Daniels, who is our assistant teacher.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah. So, similar to Sarah, you came to your first tango class with us when we'd moved to Copper Bar, which was in the September time of 2016, so coming up to 4 years ago now. And you didn't come to the very first one, but it was very soon after that, so it was either the second or third class we ran there. Do you remember it?
Well, I think we both just tried to remember exactly which the first class was, and I think we both remember the early ones, but we can't necessarily agree on
which one it was.
Which was the first one.
I think we might have already started recording the recap videos by then, so probably could just go and look back to see which one it was. I definitely remember you being there for Heroes, but I think that was in the other side of Copper Bar, so I think that might have been our third or fourth class, because it did switch a couple of times, because when we were in Copper Bar, that pool table or table football, whichever one it was, no, table tennis as well, did move around a few times. So we would go down there one day and we were in that side. So yeah, so I suppose the first one probably I'd like to cover is, like, you obviously got a ballroom background.
Yep.
But you had done some Argentine tango, but more from a sort of ballroomer's point of view, or taught by a ballroomer. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as you said, did ballroom for about 10 years. Ballroom and Latin, so that's the 10 dances, and then also added on Argentine tango onto that. And as you say, taught from sort of a ballroom aspect. So did exams in that, but then also branched out and went to a class that was more freestyle, I'll say. So more the tango that we do, but more traditional.
Yeah, so as I said, definitely all remember, we'd restarted the class, so we'd finished over the summer, we were in Ice Bar on Wine Street before that. And I wouldn't say it was unsuccessful, but it didn't sort of hit the success that we wanted from that sort of class. It was certainly not sustainable for, like, the numbers we were getting against the cost of actually running the class and doing the room hire. So when we restarted in the Copper Bar, we were always a bit. Obviously, the first class we ran, we had a fairly good number. That's largely because there was a salsa night on the Friday or the Saturday before that class, and certain people in there saw that there on Facebook there was a tango class, so we had a large number from there, and we were wondering if we were going to get a big drop off. And then obviously you came along, and do you want to know what my really honest opinion was? Well, I'll start off with the positive, and then I'll go on to my totally incorrect prediction. Where I was going, she actually could dance quite well at this, or be quite good at this. And then I thought, she's a ballroomer, so she's going to absolutely hate the teaching methods. Absolutely hate the fact that Argentine tango is mainly improvised and doesn't follow a routine. And because she's quite good, she probably doesn't like. She probably thinks our teaching is awful, and therefore we'll never see her again. So. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that was my sort of impressions. Like, so.
I'm glad to have proved you wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you proved us wrong as well. So this really ties back to that last interview I did with Dave and Gillian from Skipton Tango, where you can't really judge how somebody reacts to it until sort of months down the line. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so. As I say, at that time we didn't know that we thought you just purely were a Latin and ballroom dancer. So obviously what ballroom and Latin dancers are more than welcome to our class. But I think my sort of prejudice was based on the fact that from our own Latin and ballroom experience, especially amongst, let's say, younger Latin and ballroom dancers who the tendency is to do exams and competition, and then obviously the Argentine tango we teach or focus on teaching is all so aimed at social dancing. Obviously, we do cover a bit for show dance stuff, but it's purely mainly about lead and follow. So, yeah, how did you find our like sort of teaching style when you first walked in?
Oh, it's difficult to remember now. So long ago. Well, yeah, I obviously liked it enough to stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I liked that you started at the beginning, because it was slightly different to what I'd done before. And I like that you explained things, sort of the movement as not just expecting people to know, or not saying things like, oh, feel it, or things that a previous teacher had said about tango that you kind of think, well, that's great, but what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
So it's kind of talking more about like the physical movement and what you're sort of expected to do with your body. So yeah, I think that helped. And I liked then also that you went on to more complex moves, which, having done dancing, kept my interest. It wasn't just, oh, we're just doing something really basic that I might get bored of. We carried on. I was like, yeah, this is good. This is the kind of stuff that I want to be doing. So yeah, it's
yeah,
I like
so we had some I think it's like salsa dancers in our first class, and quite a few of them stuck around, but some of them really didn't like the fact that first it was the opposite of what you actually liked about it, was the fact that they wanted to learn a set routine or like a mini routine so they could go away with, here you go, here's a routine I can do. And also they didn't like the fact that the class sort of gets is progressive in difficulty, so it always starts at the very beginning, and then by the end, even in those early classes, we were still trying to push to advanced or experimental level tango by the end. And I didn't like the fact that we were covering that whole spectrum. They wanted it to stay at sort of a consistent sort of beginner novice level throughout. So yeah, that was, again, as I say, we can't quite remember which class you came to, whether it was like the second or third class, but that was another probably possible reason why we thought that, especially from a ballroom point of view, where you are used to learning routines, that we may not see you again.
Sure. I mean, I think to start with, it might have been a bit challenging because, say, the second week when I came and you did something completely different that wasn't related to what I'd done before, and when you're used to doing routines or building things up and haven't got the technical knowledge to perhaps carry things through the same, then it is challenging. But then once you stick with it a bit longer, then it all makes sense. So.
I suppose one of the things that I know you miss on is you don't get much chance to actually do the Latin and ballroom anymore.
No, I mean, I did it for about a year, I think, when I moved down here still, and then the chap who I had been dancing with, so the partner, went off on a cruise, which was why he'd been practicing, or why he'd allowed me to practice with him. And then yeah, he went on the cruise that he'd been practicing for, and yeah, it kind of fizzled out from there. And unfortunately, in most areas for ballroom and Latin, you need to have a partner. They're not as sort of taxi system as tango or our tango and salsa type groups. But where I used to dance in Derbyshire, I was the assistant teacher there, so obviously I could just ask anyone to dance or go round, and I'd always have a partner. So yeah, it was a bit more challenging here, and unfortunately it's fizzled.
as you said, you do salsa as well. When did the salsa start? Was that when you moved down, or was you already dabbling in that?
Yeah, I started in Derbyshire as well, but it really kicked off here. So in Derbyshire, it was a dabble. Sort of danced a bit, but wasn't particularly keen on the crowd up there. It was the typical thing that puts younger ladies off, of some older gentlemen being a bit too seedy,
Okay.
or liking to get a bit too sort of close. Um, but then down here, got a couple of friends who sort of invited me along, and then that really kicked off into the big social scene that it used to be, and made me a lot of friends. So yeah, it was, I think, coming down, moving to a completely new area where I knew nobody, dancing really helped and gave me a social life.
I suppose again, the thing that's I like about I don't dance salsa particularly well, or I don't know if I dance it well actually. I don't particularly like dancing salsa, but same with like rock and roll as well. But the thing I do like about like the salsa scene is that it is heavily based on like the social aspect. So again, when you dance, you go to a club, you may not go with anybody, but then you get asked to dance, or you can ask other people, and so that's where the sort of real crossover becomes, where you obviously tango, you go to a milonga, and you probably you can go as a solo dancer and you get asked to dance. And I think it's just a really good way of actually just getting to meet people. And so the salsa scene also sort of develops as well. So once you've done salsa, there's normally a bachata section or a kazumba part as well, which then sort of expands out, which opens it up to more people.
Yeah, I think it adds variety. Sometimes they even throw in a cha-cha-cha.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is nice, and as you say, it's very social. And compared to tango, I think it's possibly even a bit more social.
I think
Because
with tango, there are very social tango clubs out there. I think but most of them, as they tend to go into this sort of traditional idea where the social aspect of it sort of gets lost quite heavily compared to like the salsa side. So salsa, you often find danced in a bar, or like actually have a proper night, or in like a main club or something. While tango, you're pretty much stuck to church halls. You'll very rarely find us, you know, I'm not sure about whether there are what sort of franchises of bars there are, but obviously in Swansea, you could have gone to Bamboo or something like Yates, and there is salsa there. You never get like a tango event happening in one of those sort of clubs. And I think also like the general like sort of etiquette of tango, where everybody's sort of sitting around the outside, and then the ideas of the cabecea to ask people to dance, that quite a lot of like that general like sort of real social aspect is missing. So I'd really like to actually just go to a night like a salsa night, but with tango, and trying to get that atmosphere with people dancing tango.
yeah, absolutely. I think, as you say, at least not the social aspect in modern day life.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was back when the cabecea was introduced and in the clubs then in Argentina, but here it hasn't kind of come along and been transported with the modern day. Whereas, for instance, on a salsa night, you can have lineups where anybody who's just walked into the club and hasn't ever done dancing in their life can suddenly join in and follow the person at the front, and it can get new people involved quite easily that way, rather than having to sign up or commit to a class, or sort of, some people might feel put on the spot.
Yeah.
Whereas on a night out, people are less inhibited anyway, and I'll just join in with that. And
I think one of the this is something which we really want to try and encourage. Like, we don't think that you should be able to dance multiple dances, but we think if you're into dance, or if you're saying that you really enjoy dance tango, you probably should explore other dances as well, and trying to get multi-dancers to do stuff. Just the number of tango dancers you speak to can only dance tango. They might be able to muggle them their way through a basic of salsa or a basic of rock and roll, but I think that has sort of been to the real detriment of sort of Argentine tango as far as its inclusion into like the sort of wider dance scene. So obviously myself and Alison and you, we've all been to sort of some of the dance nights in Swansea, things like when Steve does his stuff at the 360 or in the tower or that one at the Brangwyn Hall, but it's more heavily based on the salsa, the bachata and the kazumba side, and you might get a song like a kazumba song that you can have a bit of Argentine tango too, or the DJ might just put the odd Argentine tango song like a Gotang project song into it. But it's understandable why they put so few tangos in, because there isn't that many tango dancers or people there who actually dance tango to dance to them. But as I say, it would be really nice to actually have a Latin night which incorporates all the sort of Latin dances, not just those sort of main ones of salsa, bachata, kazumba, occasional cha-cha-cha, rumba, but also have tango, zig. And I think that would be really nice. And then even expand it up to have like sort of the jivey rock and roll stuff in it.
I suppose the one thing to my mind of what you were just saying in that list is the thing that sets tango apart is that it's an anti-clockwise dance around the dance floor, whereas all the others are stationary, like you have your own little bubble.
Yeah.
So for people to suddenly sort of move around and get that might be quite controversial in a club setting.
Yeah, true. That's only because we expect tango to travel around because of the way it's usually danced. But unlike sort of like, say, foxtrot, which really does travel because all the moves in foxtrot actually aimed at movement around the floor. You know, it's walking with style, which obviously people also describe tango as. But tango has quite a lot of stationary moves in it, and there's loads of. I saw a video earlier, and it was Jenny and Ricardo, I think, and it was dancing in a small space, and they were dancing basically in their hallway, so just in front of their front door, and that obviously didn't travel. So again, I think that's probably again something that sort of tango dancers could adapt to if they really wanted to, and actually, so
maybe just something that we need to practice then if we want to introduce that more social aspect.
Yeah, and obviously get enough people then interested in going to salsa events or those sort of other dance events, so you can actually get some sort of purchase on the DJ to actually say, can you actually play some stuff? Because it's not going to kill the atmosphere, because there will still be people dancing. And obviously music has to sort of, I say me and Alison, when we're sort of always try to look for music that can be danced multiple dance styles too. So I suppose that also brings on to, what's your opinions on fusion?
Mixed. So on the one hand, I like it, and I think when I watch it, I enjoy when people can bring things together and something new, an interpretation of their own things. When dancing it personally, I think you have to be careful, because you have to know the person that you're dancing with quite well and what fusions or what other styles they know to be able to fuse something. And pick up, or if you're leading, be very clear on, right, and now I'm going to lead into this, rather than just start to fuse and your follower perhaps doesn't really understand it and is still trying to stick to the tango technique, and then it all goes horribly wrong. So yeah, when it works, I mean, we've danced that, haven't we? We've put some ballroom in, and I think it's worked very nicely. But obviously, with the tango to ballroom hold, there's that very distinct difference. And then I go, oh, okay, you've gone into ballroom hold. We're fusing now, and then it works well.
Yeah, but again, I think that like the fusion thing might be just a good way of actually trying to open sort of tango up to more people. So it's going to move there. I suppose you just touched on the lead in then. So obviously you both lead and follow. I'm assuming that originally started because of your assistant teaching in the ballroom world.
Yeah, so before I became assistant teacher, the leading actually started because there weren't enough leads. So obviously you kind of waiting around for the leader to swap through all the followers, and it gets a bit boring standing around or dancing by yourself. So in some of the sequence dances that we did in ballroom, which is basically a sequence of, I think, 16 bars repeated, I thought, hang on, this is fairly easy. I could just swap around and literally mirror the steps. Didn't have to think or lead too much. Started off with a Latin one, I think, so you don't have to be in hold. It was just a hand hold, and went from there really. And I built it up, and then had enjoyment. And okay, well, 2 more of us can dance then, and built it up until I was leading in pretty much every dance. There's still a couple that I struggle with, but I'm not sure why, but like a jive rock and roll still flummoxes me a bit because of the opposite back step. But yeah, all the others. And then I started to enjoy the lead for the sake of lead as well, because it gets your mind working a bit more. You have to plan ahead and make sure that your lead is correct for the follower to actually do the move that you are asking, so it's more mentally challenging.
Yeah, and this is something again that over the weekend we went to the Shrock Mist Weekender, and we did a couple of tango classes there, and it was aimed at what they would call intermediate level, but that's intermediate level for people who have done some tango through Shrock, I suppose, rather than those who go to like full-on tango classes. So it was the cross, bacoccio, I think there was a planeo in it. So Baleo, I've forgotten what the exact thing was. But for those, I thought, I'm actually going to follow for these, and Alison's going to lead.
Oh, nice.
And as you frequently told me, I am a terrible follower.
Yeah, I think you might have heard that once or twice from me too.
Yeah, so what I want to try and get onto is how you get you can certainly go to some classes and they'll say, everybody do like this part, and it's like the followers part or something, everybody do the leads thing. And they'll say, because it's important to understand the follower and leader's parts, which I agree with. What I don't agree with, though, is when people say to become a better leader, you should learn to follow, because then you know what the leader actually does. Because from my point of view, I'm a terrible follower. I can follow a bit, but I understand what the follower should be doing because I've actually got that sort of technical knowledge of tango. So I think understanding what the follower is doing rather than actually being able to do it, I suppose, is or practice doing it to get better at following is the key thing. But from your point of view, as obviously somebody who leads and follows, how does like following help your lead, or leading help your following, I suppose?
So I followed first. So I would definitely say that having followed first, my lead improved when I did come to lead, because I'd had a good leader. So my primary lead when I was dancing ballroom was with the teacher. So it was a good lead. And then when I came to lead, I knew what it ought to feel like. So immediately my hold was better, and in ballroom, a lot of the lead comes from the hold rather than from your chest in tango. So I definitely think my lead improved a lot from having followed. I would say my follow has probably improved from leading as well. But sometimes, so just recently, I have been partnered with my own partner, doing your classes, and he has more recently started, and obviously he's leading and I'm following. So then sometimes it's been challenging to follow yet try and explain how he's meant to lead. So it's kind of back leading in a way, and it's something that I struggle very much to do without having somebody like we usually do in class, I can go, hang on, Alison or Sarah, can I just grab you for a moment and see how I lead this and then explain it? So it's difficult to kind of switch your mind right round whilst you're trying to follow to explain something and lead without doing it myself. But if I can then switch and do it myself, then I can usually do it better because I can see the effects and know how it is to follow. And for instance, sometimes when I dance with you and I've been leading all class because there aren't enough leads, you'll take me in and say, this is how it feels like for the follower. And that can help me often because I go, oh, so they're meant to be like this. So to me, that does still help to have that switch. And then I can go back and go, right, I'm meant to be doing this or this.
Yeah, because I found from my own point of view, I think the skills for a follower are certainly different from skills from a leader. So I think this is most often portrayed in sort of like the learning curves for leaders and followers. I think for followers, you can learn to follow Tango fairly quickly, or at least get to do something really quickly, because I don't know whether this is just because followers tend to be female and girls tend to have some sort of dance experience. They seem to be less subconscious about dancing, at least. But with leaders, obviously you've got that sort of social pressure once if they do dancing, that they have to lead the follower. The follower expects something of the leader. Also, you've got the sort of general social sort of aspect of men feeling a bit embarrassed about dancing for the first time. So I think that probably plays some part into it. But the actual thing for a leader, you have to sort of think about what your follower is going to be doing and where you want them to be, as well as actually doing your own movement. I think that's where the steeper learning curve comes in. I think then for leaders, it sort of tails off, because for a follower, you can learn to follow even badly with technique, but then as you get better, then your technique improves, and that's the bits which makes somebody from somebody who can dance to somebody who's really good at dancing, having that tidiness. While leaders, it's nice to be tidy, it gives aesthetic to your dancing, but fundamentally you can dance like me, which is really messy. I do really like my let's actually go into actual technical tango. To be most efficient in your walking tango, your feet should be facing straight on, your knees should be tracking straight, and your thighs should be passing in a straight line. That looks nice and is most effective. My legs don't do that because of the cycling. I've got quads which don't allow my thighs to really pass particularly closely together. So my hip angle is quite wide. My knees point slightly outwards, so my knees don't track properly. But it fundamentally doesn't actually alter what you feel as a follower when you dance. So, because all my information is coming from my chest, so it may look, not from somebody on looking, it may not look the prettiest, but as far as my dancing is concerned, it feels quite nice. So, but when I can teach a follower to follow, so I can say, right, can you feel my movement in the chest? Step back. They can work on their technique to extend that step back and make it look neat, to have the outturn in the foot, sliding on the floor. But I suppose the thing that I miss sometimes, because I don't follow, especially I don't follow in heels or wear heels, is the actual how that has an effect. So I've forgotten which class we were teaching, but we were teaching something, and it basically involved one foot passing over the other. And I think it was actually as Alison was doing it as a leader. And what I normally do, because my obviously got no heels on, my foot can pass one over the other fairly easily. As a follower, though, if you're wearing heel, or if you're leading in heels, you would take the top of your foot off with your own heel. And I'm assuming that when you actually become an accomplished follower, you already have that sort of built in to know where your feet are to avoid that sort of stuff. Which,
I think everybody who wears heels and starts doing crosses or any kind of dance like that has scraped their foot at some point. And it's a learning process, and even when you get more advanced, if you do it quickly or you're just slightly off in your timing, then you can still do it. Certainly in ballroom, for instance, the quick step, you can certainly risk doing that. But yes, hopefully as you get more experience, that will become less of a hazard. And yes, certainly when I've switched, say, in our classes from lead to follow, and I still have heels on, or sorry, vice versa, from follow to lead and have heels on, you certainly have to lead differently sometimes in heels. So I prefer to lead in flats, because your balance obviously changes as well. And often as a lead, you've got to support your follower in balance. So you're asking her to go slightly off her axis, or to be on one foot and just be a stable thing for her to hold on to. And if she's wobbling and clinging onto you, and you're then in heels and leaning forward to her and get wobbly as well, it's not a good combination. But and also obviously lifts are usually out of the question in heels, because again it changes your balance so much, and I perhaps wouldn't want to put the extra pressure on the heel as well and damage them, since they're rather expensive shoes usually.
Yeah. That's again something like followers, you like, because you really don't know what's coming up from what the leader is about to lead, so you could be asked to pivot at any time. You always need that technique to have the weight off the heel. Like with a leader, we sort of go, I'm going to probably get myself into a point where I can pivot, therefore I can lift my heel at any point. So good technique says we should, even leaders should have the weight on the balls of the feet, but sometimes you just ground yourself and you can be sort of lazy with it, and you can still get away with it. Well, if you don't have that sort of general bit of technique for a follower, probably do some damage to your knees. And so it's then about this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier, that you became one of our assistant teachers.
Yes.
So obviously in the class before that, you were able to assist people in the class. So either as a follower or leader, you could give advice, and especially being able to do both. If you are dancing with a new leader, you could give advice to them, and vice versa for followers as well. And that's something this is something we always we discussed with Dave and Gillian. Like, when do you allow people in the class to start actually doing things in the class where they help others? Because obviously, I think we've all been to those sort of classes, no matter which style, where you're working your way around, and there's going to be somebody who really shouldn't be giving advice, is giving an advice. But again, I don't know, big head moment now. I think our teaching quality is good enough that when we where people who've been given to the class now get the knowledge and then can portray it themselves, and without any sort of mistakes. But obviously we wanted, again, this is more the reason why we asked you to be assistant teachers. One, because we thought it would really benefit. It's basically because it would benefit the club massively to have people who could take over from us if we weren't there. It gives you that extra bit of authority in the class, so we can say these are our assistant teachers, and any beginners know then that the advice you're going to be giving them is correct. So, and also I think it's sort of just to show our appreciation for you as well, that you've actually come that way and actually recognising that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think both Claire and I appreciated that, and I think also, as you say, it came to the point because we've both been teachers or of some kind before, and came to the point where we knew more of teachers, of your techniques and things, that we would start, if beginners would ask us something like, oh, am I doing that right? You would naturally sort of answer and go into a bit of a teaching role, when you two were busy and we couldn't obviously pass it on to you anyway. So, and
also sort of our taxi system as well, where you're constantly dancing with people, it does work as for that. I suppose one of the questions again was, we've always said no matter what whoever we're teaching, we don't want people to be like myself and Alison. We want you to develop your own styles and stuff like that. And that's true of the teaching as well. We don't want you to be sort of clones of what we teach. Otherwise, we might as well just record all our lessons. And if we're not there, just go, here you go, here's a recording of us teaching. And as if we've been to classes where you've taught, where either like Alison's been your assistant for it, and I've been in the class, or you've taught with Sarah. And as you can see, there's obviously crossover between what does you still keep the general format of the class the same, but the way you explain things is obviously different to me, and that's because you have a different. Even though we've got Latin and ballroom backgrounds as well, my Latin and ballroom background is totally different to yours because I didn't go through the formal of exams. I went to a sort of one-off, not one-off classes, but the dance society classes, and then did some competitions, and then ended up teaching and stuff like that. So, how do you? So you're obviously teaching methods obviously change, and obviously you have different. Again, I don't like these teachers who just sort of repeat what another teacher has done.
Mm-hmm.
So when you teach, you use different language to me. You use different examples, and your way of thinking of it has changed. So, we should discuss how you actually consider tango when you're actually teaching it.
Difficult question.
We have to put one difficult question in these interviews.
So, my favourite class, I think, would be the one, maybe my first solo one, where I had a plan. So I thought of, say, a move that I wanted to do, or something that was like a really nice thing, and then I thought, right, break this down. What are the things that we can build up to that? What are the techniques and moves, and give a few variations in as well. So as you say, we don't really do routines, but because obviously beforehand you never know who's going to turn up. It might just be all the regulars that are quite well advanced, or you might get a load of beginners that have never been to a tango class in their life. So, and as you go, that obviously then the class has to be slightly more swayed to the majority of who's there. But in general, I had a plan. I'd start, I can't even remember what that class was now, but I had a start off with, I think we went into...
It was definitely hot shows.
Yeah, hot shows, and then went in...
Was it plebeians we did? It was some sort of leg wrappy type stuff.
With the wrap. Yeah, definitely with the leg wrap. So yeah, it's with a couple of variations in as well. So you can either do this one or this one if you choose to, which I think provides that variety for people. If they don't like one option, they can go with the other. But also, as you say, doesn't keep them into like one fixed mindset or routine. But yeah, how do I think about it? That's how it should hopefully work. When I plan lessons, I think when I've done other ones, or when I've done ones with Sarah, obviously we don't live together like you and Alison, so we just have a 10-minute chat, perhaps, or 5 minutes over several weeks about, all right, we'll do this, we'll do it that way, or not, and then it kind of fumbles together somehow. But
yeah, so that's the opposite. Myself and Alison don't really plan our lessons at all. We might normally have like one overarching concept which we're going to have a look at that week. Might be heroes or something like that, but or there might be something like specific, like we've asked somebody to, or we've asked what people want to cover, in which case we do actually think of that. Or sometimes somebody will send us like a video and go, "Can you teach this bit of it?"
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's quite often we sort of show up to, especially with our lunchtime class, we go, we haven't planned anything, let's see who's here. So I think that's probably our chances of ever like sort of teaching internationally and like being invited to respected tango festivals and stuff are gone. What, they don't plan their classes? That's struck off. So, but
I suppose sometimes you might not necessarily know with all of your classes. For instance, with the class that you did the other day, you say this is what we want to get to, but this is how we get to it. So you still break down the move.
Yeah.
they might not have a load of forethought and planning ahead in a long time in advance, but you still have some
Yeah.
sort of plan of how to get there.
Yeah. Well, most of it, I think, just comes down to logic, really. It's like, well, we hopefully everything you do in Tango should have some sort of logic to it. It should all fit together somehow. I think sort of just the way I always think about something is how you break down it into its individual components and how those then come together to form something. It's like building something like Lego. But yeah, so that's how I sort of generally think about it. And I think now I've got to a point where I can rely on my technical knowledge and my experience to a level where, I can just go in and teach, and hopefully, this is how you get to this point logically. There might be other paths of getting to that point as well, which that means you can then do a second lesson in about 4 weeks' time where you've got something else to cover. And then you just look at all these different cross links between the paths, and it basically ends up at a point where you never have to really teach the same lesson twice.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anything where you'd want to take your teaching of Tango to? Is there any sort of areas you want to really focus in on? Would it be sort of leading for followers or leading for people in heels or something like that?
Definitely. I think it's something that I'd like to learn more myself. I don't think I'd be perhaps there yet in terms of teaching it, but it's definitely something that I'd like to do, because it means that you'd be able to swap more and more quickly and be able to still do more interesting things. Whereas at the moment, I feel if I want to do a certain lift or a certain something, I have to go and swap my shoes, which takes time out of dancing, and maybe your partner's already found somebody else, or for whatever reason, it's just time consuming. And I also think that it might encourage more current followers to lead if they know that they don't have to swap shoes, or that they can just go, I can just swap around and do this little thing. It doesn't have to be complicated or anything, but if it's more accessible for them, then more people might do it. I also think, as you say, like if you were to be able to learn the differences of being in heels and have that experience yourself, it might add something, just as, again, something different to learn and a new skill set. Apart from that, the thing that I'd like to learn more and then eventually teach when I can do it better myself is putting all of the moves together more fluidly and more interestingly, or in closer proximity, without having to have walks in between to think and get my mind in gear.
That's mainly an experience thing, but again, this probably goes on to something that you just said about getting more followers to lead. Is obviously with most partner dances, there's normally more females than males, and let's assume that males are normally leaders and females are normally followers. But if you get a follower who can lead as well, it sort of opens up an event more to you. Because let's say if you went to a traditional event and you had like the tandas arranged in 4 rather than 3, and you had 3 to 4 minute songs in total, you only get 4 chances to be asked to dance an hour from a point of view of a follower. And if your ratio to men to women is, say, half, you could be sat out for sort of half an hour, 3/4 of an hour on average, doing very little. But at least if you have that ability to follow, you can ask somebody else at your table, another follower, just to have a dance, and it really opens things up. And something that I've never really touched on in any of these interviews, actually, is the queer tango scene. Again, like my usual thing of language and whether what actually constitutes as queer tango. There's, again, sort of word queer, I suppose, in my mind at least, brings up the ideas of sort of sexual orientation, which I don't think sexual orientation has anything to do with tango, or sexuality has anything to do with tango. But from the point of view of their things where they got like fluidity between who's dancing with who, so you have men dancing with men, women dancing with women, men dancing with women, but in reverse roles, so women leading men, or even being fluid within that partnership. So the follower could be the lead. So let's get into say there's a traditional man as leader, or man and woman dancing together. The woman could be doing the leading and the man doing the following for parts. And I think that would be something to really sort of develop as well, where you're sort of switching your lead and follower. So I suppose that's something you could probably develop as well from your skills of being both a leader and a follower.
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed it, and I think also it adds something to my teaching. I mean, obviously you're lucky enough to have Alison as a partner and co-teacher, so for you the teaching works as a partnership. But for instance, when Alison's not been well or when Chris hasn't been there, it's been more challenging. So whereas for me, I don't have a permanent dance partner or teacher, so I'm able to sort of switch or use people to sort of do demonstrations and switch from both.
Yeah.
But yes, it's I definitely think if more people were able to switch, it would definitely
make things easier. Must be last year, so it definitely wasn't this year, as we've now missed 3 months of Tango. But well, I haven't missed it because we've obviously got the online class. But there was a couple of times last year where Alison was ill or was injured, so couldn't teach a lunchtime class, for instance. So I was having to try and teach it by myself, and it's really fiddly to try and just teach it as a solo dancer by yourself. It's like, obviously you can pull somebody in, but if you've got, especially with the lunchtime class where we got a fairly high turnover just because, or it's inconsistent with who's there each week, so you never really know with numbers or how much, or so you might get a class full of people who've never danced before, or you end up with a class totally empty, or you'll have people who dance for ages and for doing demos or pulling somebody out from the crowd is easy to demo with. So it's certainly a challenge having to try and teach by yourself. So you're there going, I suppose it's the same thing that you had with your partner. You're going, so just lead me into this position. And you're going, and from my point of view, it's like, I'm just trying to get you to put your foot here. So I suppose the other thing is, as we've talked mainly about your partner in dancing, but you also do the belly dancing now as well. Is that a fairly new thing, or was that something you'd done, the solo dancing stuff? Had you done that previously?
Yes, so I had dabbled already, but then when I came here, I found a class that was close by and was at the right point for me, and got stuck in. To start with, I started off with the Egyptian style, and then unfortunately my teacher moved away and then went on into what was called ATS, American Tribal Style, and now is being renamed for lots of political and other reasons.
Politics in dance, shocking.
But which is basically a group dance. So everybody follows a leader, much as we do, but separately. So that's quite interesting, is that you still have a lead or a sign that tells you this move is coming up, and then you know to go from there. So, but obviously it's a larger move usually, or something much more like a signal rather than a small chest thing that you feel because you're not actually in contact.
It's a different form of lead, isn't it? There's so many different leads you can get. So, I suppose we probably should be coming up to the end of the interview now. Is there anything that you particularly want to discuss or go into?
No, I think the only thing that I was thinking I'd like to say of where we would go in the class, which I think is one thing that you spoke about with Sarah, was that at one point, and I think the only thing that I've missed in these classes is, which I've had in my other classes or my other styles of dance, is something to aim for. So obviously you always want to get better, but it's not a particular thing. It's just a gradual, continual improvement. Whereas in my other things, I've either had an exam or a competition or a performance. So like with the belly dancing, we don't have exams or anything, but we go and perform at a particular show or as a social thing, and it's just something to aim for that kind of gives you a bit of focus. And
Yeah, well, the performance thing we would actually quite like to sort of look into to doing, because we did speak to about this about 4 months ago. Then obviously COVID-19 came around, so yeah, it's something that we definitely would like to actually do, because again, we already said about trying to open up Tango into the wider dance community. There's also opening up Tango to just the wider community in general. And obviously at the moment, when we get to invited to do like events and do demos at salsa nights, it's only just myself and Alison who do it. But it would be nice to actually to build up and do something more as like a group, whether that be a fixed sort of show dance routine or like a mini story being told via dance, or whether it's more like a sort of still improvised but still like a set sort of thing, like you have in breakdancing, where each couple do something, even though it's improvised. So I think it's definitely something to worth looking into, and maybe by the time this lockdown and social distancing relaxes, which probably be closer to the winter months when the evenings are darkening and you've got less to do in the evenings, it might be something to look at then.
Definitely, that would be good.
Yeah. So that's probably a spoiler for anybody who's watching this who's thinking of coming to the classes. Anyway,
It can always be separate. For those people who are interested, I know a lot of people are only interested in the social aspect, but obviously I started off with that one group down Bristol way that was going to do a showpiece, but I think the trouble there was that people were too far away from each other that they couldn't commit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely ways to do it, and I think even when you say about the social aspect, I think there's definitely things to be taken if you do learn to do show dancing, because it forces you to do improve sort of, again, as I was saying about in Tango, the idea of aesthetics versus whether it's important or not. There are definitely certain things like that are both aesthetically pleasing and also improve your technique. So like closing your feet together to come to that collect position, it looks neater, and it actually does do something as well, especially from the follower's point of view. Like, so I think there's definitely things that, even if you are that staunchly against that Argentine tango should be there to be showy or for something outside the actual partnership, I think you can still get a lot from actually learning some of this show dancing technique and things like that.
Definitely. I think also as teachers, for us, if we learn those aesthetic parts and people see that we look nice, they're more likely to want to learn it.
Yeah.
If we don't, people might not want to follow us so much as somebody who does look nicer.
Yeah. Again, this is one of those things that comes down to one thing if you watch, like, there are groups out there that have a class, and then they have like a little show part of their class where they go to some sort of event and do like a show thing. And like obviously we all went to watch what was it called? It's on the book. It's over there. Tango Fire. That's them. And that was obviously incredible to watch. But the thing where show dances fall apart for me is everybody has to be precise with their movements. It has to physically look good. That's the main part of it. But how you make something look good, this is where I'm sort of conflicted in myself. Like, do you make everybody look the same? So do they all dance in exactly the same style? Obviously all step in at the same time and stuff like that is obvious, but do you all get them into exactly the same posture of each other to do it? Or do you actually, what I personally prefer to see from like a show dance is actually watching the different styles of those people dancing. So if you watch, like, you've got a copy of Midnight Tango at the moment, but
which we have
watch it.
Yeah.
You have watched. Yeah. You can obviously see that there are differences in the dancing styles of the people who are dancing in there. So, like, if you watch the Richard and Monica dancing compared to Alexander and Guillermo, I think it is, compared to Vincent and Flavia. You can see that they're different styles, but they still all work together on stage. So I think that's something that you really want to like incorporate the style of the people dancing as well, but you don't want to obviously make it too extreme. You don't want to have like a Chenyenge dancer against a Milonguera dancer doing the same move, because it would look just absolutely awful. But so I think there's the balance there to find as well. So yeah, it's definitely something we're gonna have to work on and just work out what works. Probably just set up a load of cameras, record, and go, does this look good or not? And then work out what works. So actually, you have to do it properly.
Or find a studio with mirrors.
Yeah, but again, even when you're looking at mirrors, you get distracted. So I think actually being able to reflect and view back on it is really useful.
Definitely.
Oh, there. So yeah, we probably should finish there. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
So if you enjoy watching these videos, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have all our social media. They're listed in the description below. Also, if you are a tango dancer, teacher, organizer, musician, or involved in the tango scene, and you would like to do one of these interviews, please contact us. These are not just exclusively for people who we know. We'd love to meet more people, increase the tango network that we have, and also put it out there to people what actually goes on for within the tango scene. So we hope you're all well and keep safe, and we'll see you for our next episode of Urban Tango Nights Talks next week.